Adam Bradley, great to have you with us on Business Unlimited, Director of Corrosion Resistant Materials. There's lots to talk about. You've had an amazing week as we're recording this, which we'll unpack as we go along. But first of all, what's the business that you're director of?
Corrosion Resistant Materials, we started trading 7 years ago now. They are nickel alloys, duplexes, stainlesses. But what we like to do is a bit different to other steel stockholders in the fact that we offer many value-added services. That would include heat treatment, testing and machining. So we're trying to give the customer more of what they want when they want it.
Interesting. And how long have you been involved in the business, Adam?
I joined the business 4 years ago. I came in from a previous experience of doing the metals industry, but I felt here there was an opportunity to grow the business quite rapidly by using export customers that I had previously. So the guys here weren't tapping into any of the export markets, and it was just an opportunity that I couldn't refuse.
And you're based here in South Yorkshire. Just tell us exactly where the business is based.
Yeah, the business is based in Swinton, near Rotherham.
And have you been a South Yorkshire lad, born and bred, or have you come into the area? What's your history with the area?
No, absolutely. I was born in Barnsley Hospital. We've got family in the area. We've always lived in the area. Went to university in Leeds, followed by Sheffield. So again, stayed quite local. That
journey into the business, what was your original ambition? What did you want to do as you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, when I was at school, there wasn't a great amount of career guidance, and it's something that I'm quite passionate about now with the students of today, to give them better insight into the world of work. So the real role models that I hired at school were teachers. So I effectively wanted to be a teacher. So I got my degree in French and Spanish, and then I went on and did my PGCE, again in the same subject. But reality of the job was a lot different to what I felt it was going to be. I'd done some language assistant teaching over in Spain and France, and that was just fun because there was no pressure. So I did a bit of teaching, didn't particularly like it, so then felt, well, what can I actually do? What's my skill set? I answered an advert, and it basically just said, speaker of French and Spanish required. I had no idea what the job was. I went to the interview, got the job, because I don't think there was many people in the area who had the language skills that they needed. And it was for an umbrella frame company up in Goldthorpe, South Yorkshire, and I was living in the village at the time, so I could walk to work, no pressure or anything. And that was my first sales position, and that was selling umbrella frames and parts into France and Spain. So I did that for 18 months, absolutely loved the world of sales, and then got another job in the steel industry.
And of course, the steel industry at that particular time was thriving, I would have imagined.
It was thriving, but it was changing. I mean, it was around 15, 16 years ago. So it had moved on from just basic steels into more technical materials that we do a lot of at CRM. So a lot more into nickel, a lot more into additive manufacturing. There was a lot more technical machining going on and manufacturing. So for the UK, it was moving away from just cheap construction steels, that was all being done in China, to very much cutting edge leading technology and the higher end grades of materials.
And you've seen a lot of change in these last 4 years. So
yes.
When you came in, what were your initial goals and targets? What did you want to make the biggest difference in?
The main difference was in growing the number of customers. At the time, they had a turnover of about 1 million, and they only had about 40 or 50 customers, and they were doing about 30 orders a month. So there wasn't a great amount of traction there. So I felt if I brought the export side, we could get the number of quotes, which would then lead to more orders and more customers. So if we grew the number of customers, that was my initial kind of drive with it, then the turnover and profit would effectively look after itself.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of business owners see numbers of customers, revenue, and gross profit as their key indicators of growth. But of course, they're always the results of other things, aren't they? That's going on, and that are sometimes less visible. So clearly being able to generate leads from your marketing and find new customers, referrals, whatever the strategies, and then the relationships between the numbers of customers and the revenues that you make from them. So in that journey, when it comes to growing the numbers of customers and the revenue from them and improving margins. What strategies have you applied to make the biggest differences in the way the business functions?
Originally, it was just about direct contact. So there was a lot of phone calls, there was a lot of email messages. It was tapping into people I already knew. So at first it was quite easy, because you only had a certain amount of customers that you knew they were dealing with, and then you had another 500, 600 that you could go after. So at first it was quite easy, because I knew the people to speak to and knew the companies that would come on board. After a couple of years, when we're getting now 100 orders a month and we're trading with 50 or 60 customers a month, it becomes a lot harder to win that business and to gain new people through the door. So we've started to do a lot more on LinkedIn. LinkedIn has been great for us, to be honest, and we do get inquiries directly from it. As a result of that, customers come on board as well. We've done a lot more in terms of exhibitions. This year we've done 2 trade show exhibitions, which has allowed us more of a platform then to speak directly to new people we've not come across, people who've not come across us, and get the message out there.
And anything specifically on margins? So that's really about getting the customers in, but once you've got them, are there other metrics that you're measuring yourself against and you want to be measured against that are helping to drive the business forward?
Margins are a good one, actually, to touch on, because when we first were growing number of customers, we did often sacrifice margin just to get people through the door. So it was good to see the number of customers going up. It was good to see turnover, but margin, gross profit, is the key. So because without that, and if your turnover is too high, you're then looking at cash flow problems.
Exactly.
Because we're having to pay our suppliers and bring money through. So we then looked at it and felt, well, if we scaled it back and we even sacrificed some customers because they were low margin customers and they weren't adding anything to that bottom line, we could actually do less turnover for more profit. So a couple of years ago, as turnover went down from 4 to 3 million, but as profit increased by a couple of 100,000. So instead of doing around 12, 13% gross profit, we were now doing 23. So we were being more selective. We were being more selective over the customers we were speaking to and dealing with. When it was difficult at first, because you don't really know who's going to be good margin, who's not, if you know what I mean. So we had to build up that bit of history to understand the products, the customers, and then ultimately go after more of the customers who were bringing in the higher yields and the better margins.
So that sounds like a journey of confidence as much as anything else. Confidence in your own numbers, and then confidence to say no to some and yes to others, and know who you're targeting.
You're absolutely right, and you should never be afraid to say no. That's the biggest thing I've ever learned in the last couple of years, because a customer will drive down the price to a point where you think, is it worth it? And when you're first starting out on business, you do get a bit worried if you've not had an order in a couple of days, or you've got bills to pay, and you think, well, it's £1,000 profit, let's take it. But actually, in percentage terms, it's probably better not to, because then, as we mentioned, with cash flow and everything, you might have to then pay 30 grand out on the back of that. So,
what's the phrase? Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king or queen. So
good one.
It's the cash flow that's the key, isn't it? And working out
really
the relationship between those figures.
Once you get an understanding of that as well, you then know which customers you want in the future. Who is your ideal customer? Once you get a grip of that, then you can continue to grow.
What other key lessons do you think you learned in the last 4 years?
A good one is to be in control of it as well. Don't let the business run away with it, really, because you've got to be in control of the day-to-day of the business. As you're growing, you could quite easily go, well, we need a bigger building, we need a bigger saw, we need more material, we need more stock. And you've just got to sometimes stop and think, actually, is this the right thing to do? Do we need to increase our overheads? Do we need to bring another salesperson in? Could we utilize people better in the roles that they're doing? Could they do more than one role? So I think that clearness of mind is really important in business.
And do you feel like you manage your time effectively in that respect? Because clearly there's pressure on you as a director, all the different hats you wear.
Yeah.
working with the important, not just the urgent, is the constant struggle, isn't it? And prioritizing your activities every day into things that will both service the business and the customers and to develop the business. That's the ultimate challenge in business, I think, for a lot of business owners.
It really is, and luckily there's three of us really to share that load. So we do spread out the roles and tasks quite well, and we've come now to kind of be better at planning. So I know people use 90-day planning tools or whatever. We're not quite as good as that, but we are certainly now coming together more, and we're thinking ahead more, so that we can prioritize things better.
Talk about some of the challenges you've experienced in that 4 years. For instance, the pandemic.
I don't think anybody's undergone anything like that in business before a pandemic. We were lucky in terms of manufacturing. Manufacturing didn't stop. It continued. There was a couple of months at the beginning of the pandemic where some companies shut, some machine shops shut, because they felt it was just going to be over and done with within, 6 to 12 weeks. The biggest challenge was then people working from home. So it was communication. When you're all working around in an office together, you can talk. When everyone's at home and working isolated, that's the big challenge. But we did keep in contact. We did speak to each other daily. And it was more important at that point to take time out and just have a chat for 10 minutes with somebody than it is probably now. So we had Brexit, because we do a lot of exporting. So Brexit was fun, so to speak. Because even though we were planning for it and we had an idea of what was going to happen, we didn't really know the logistics of Brexit until it happened, until it was here. And we had to learn by trial and error. We had to learn as we went along. We found things out. That was challenge number 2. And then obviously now we're undergoing further challenges with the cost of living and the cost of fuel. So we buy our materials from mills, and they use a lot of energy. They use a lot of gas. Many of them are based in Europe, in Germany and France, and they're highly reliant on Russian gas. So now that pipeline has been cut off to them. The price of their energy has gone through the roof, really. So now the material price is more expensive. So this is again where we go back to turnover. We've got to be very careful on that, because if our material prices are increasing by 30%, our turnover should naturally increase by 30%. But with it, we want the profits to increase as well. So it's a good time for the business, and it's a good time for manufacturing. But you've just got to be careful to maximise it at the right time.
And a constant review of prices, I'm sure.
Yes, constant. Yes, and then there becomes the risk of, well, when you're buying for stock, what's the best price to buy it at? Because you don't want to be sat with something at a very high price, and then suddenly the market crashes, and you're left with it.
Now, all of that has led to some real recognition, certainly locally, but further afield as well. Over the last year, particularly, it's been a bit of a whistle stop for you, hasn't it? So tell us about some of the successes, particularly in the last year, having come through the pandemic, and how you and CRM have been recognised in that respect.
I mean, the recognition this year has been phenomenal, to be honest with you, Tim. It all kind of started in April this year with the award of the Queen's Award for International Trade. That was testament to the growth we've seen in export sales. And it was just a great rubber stamp to say, job well done. You've done incredibly well. And in the same week of that, we were recognised more locally, but also within our industry, with the Made in Sheffield Award for export sales. Made in Sheffield is an organisation of all local manufacturers, steel producers, and engineering companies, all in Sheffield. It's historic recognition as well. So for me, that personally was very rewarding, because you're with your peers, you're with people within your industry who are then saying, job well done, you've done really well, you're showing good growth and everything. So that was the biggest shock. Following on from that more locally, we get involved quite a lot with the Barnsley and Rotherham Chamber of Commerce, and we support a lot of the companies that are in there through the services that we bring into our company, through apprenticeships, through work experience, etc. So again, to be recognised locally was just another great honour. And it was nice as well for the Chamber to recognise our Queen's Award and other local companies' Queen's Awards as well, because there were 4 Queen's Award winners from within the Chamber, and there was 11 within South Yorkshire. So actually, outside of London, South Yorkshire is showing just such great export growth.
And you personally received the Business Person of the Year award as well. So that must have been just like the icing on the cake for you.
It was. It's still a big shock, Tim. I'll be honest with you, because I wasn't expecting it. I like to keep busy, so I've been doing lots of things, lots of projects outside of work, and just promoting manufacturing, engineering, apprenticeships, the local economy. And for me personally, I think it's great, the businesses that are around within Barnsley, Rotherham, Sheffield, and Doncaster. Don't get me wrong, they are absolutely world class, the businesses around here. And that's not just the big businesses, that's small businesses as well. Businesses that maybe only have 2 or 3 people there. They're some of the best in the world.
That's phenomenal. And hearing your story and how you're also giving back into the community in the wider sense is really encouraging, and holding that balance between progressing CRM and being able to give back is clearly inspirational, I'm sure, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Well, Adam Bradley, Director of Corrosion Resistant Materials, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me on.